Di ka niya nanakawan, hindi ka niya dadayain, di ka niya bobolahin. Si Ma'am Leni hindi lang PR. She's the real deal.
Abigail Valte was thrust into the spotlight at the age of 29 as a Deputy Presidential Spokesperson of then Philippine President Benigno Aquino III. In this episode, she shares with us her fondest memories of serving in the government and why she believes that the last man standing in the 2022 presidential elections should be a woman.
First and foremost, kamusta po kayo? What keeps you busy these days? And what is a typical day like for you?
Oh, interesting question. Well, I am back in the private sector since I left government in 2016, but now I work in a fintech startup that is in the payment space. It is a lot more peaceful than was my public life. I have a teenage son kasi. So my day starts with making sure that he's all set for his online classes. And then I go to work. I think medyo mas productive nga ako ngayon kasi mas madaling mag-move around in terms of balancing yung work and my home life.
I remember very vividly the Aquino administration. It was first year high school when PNoy was inaugurated. And
Sorry, Erwin, you were what? First year high
first
school?
year high school, yes,
Oh my
ma'am. And it was definitely a welcome change. Like, naramdaman talaga namin yung pagbabago in terms of how people responded to the government. And you were really one of the most recognizable faces of the Aquino administration. And by the way, ma'am, you still look as youthful as ever.
Thank you, thank you. I'd like to think that, well, I was also actually very young when the administration started. Siyempre not as young as you, Erwin, because first year high school, but I was 29 when I started in the public sector. So that was a little bit of also quite a big challenge for me when I started. In terms of the work, it was very difficult. It was very challenging. But I gained a lot of friends in government. Yung mga nakatrabaho ko, sila talaga yung mga namimiss ko. The work, not so much. Kasi again, very demanding nga siya. And when I started in government, my son was only, I think, 2 years old. So when I finished, he was 8. So parang ang daming panahong lumipas nung nasa gobyerno ako. Fondest memory, I think working with PNoy. I can just sum it up in that way. Even if at the time that I was there, it was really quite difficult and quite challenging. But I look back on it now as character building. Doon ako talagang natutong, alam mo yon, tumutok sa trabaho, makipagkapwa-tao, isipin kung ano yung magiging effect nung mga ginagawa ko sa iba.
Personally, I can relate. As a young professional, one of the problems of millennials these days is when they join the workforce, they expect to see a drastic contribution. But oftentimes, that need is not met. Kasi syempre, you're an entry-level job. Parang you can't see right away coming from your experience, no? That might be a point of thinking for other people who want to join the government kasi syempre, what you do will impact real lives and real people. So, having said that, ma'am, prior to joining the government, you actually worked for a law firm. So, what is your advice to young people who want to take a leap of faith and serve in the government?
You know, government service is really para sa bayan. There is no other way to look at it because hindi ka yayaman sa gobyerno eh. At let me rephrase that, hindi ka dapat yumaman sa gobyerno. In fact, most of us had to tap into savings, had to, really cut down on your expenses because a government salary does not, I think medyo mas mataas na ngayon, kasi naglabas si PNoy ng higher salary standardization, which we did not benefit from. It was the next administration that benefited from it. And which is good also because um, yung nasa gobyerno naman, hindi lang yung mga political appointees. We have more than 1 million workers in government that really benefited from that. Ano. If you're looking for more, I guess in the financial space, 'di ba? You call it either B2B, which is business to business, or business to consumer. Ang gobyerno talagang business to consumer. Doon mo makikita yung immediate impact ng trabaho mo. Especially if you work for a frontline agency like the DOH or the DSWD. Talagang immediate nakikita mo yung kahit individual contributor ka and you are not in a management role, you will see how your work contributes to the ordinary Filipino, whether it's making policy or whether it's making sure that frontline services are running properly and on time. Well, I know that pay naman in the private sector is really a lot higher compared to government. But ako, I cannot compare the professional satisfaction of what you get when you work in the private sector.
You also mentioned that it was stressful. It was a very stressful job. Were there times po ba na you wanted to quit? And what made you decide to stay?
Naku, syempre, pag feeling ko nagkakamali ako, I would go to the president and I did offer my resignation once to PNoy and he did not accept it. Ang sabi niya, ang usapan natin, sabay tayong papasok, sabay tayong aalis. So, hindi mo kami po pwedeng iiwan. Being in the public eye is no joke because people look at your every move and your every statement and will judge. Okay lang sana kung ikaw kung judge you, but will judge the president by what you do. So, in the beginning, I was very clear to myself na hindi ko siya pwedeng ipahiya. 'Di ba? So, yun yung commitment ko naman sa kanya that I would do my work well to the best of my ability and hindi ko siya wala ako dapat gawin para mapahiya naman yung boss ko. 'Di ba? Parang sa lahat ng iniisip kasi ng isang presidente, yung ayaw mo nang makisali, naki-contribute ka pa ng sakit ng ulo, 'di ba? Yung tipong halimbawa, you went out to dinner tapos napainom kayo ng konti, medyo nagwalwal ka, 'di ba? Tapos people see it, people get it on social media. That wasn't the thing that parang isa yun dun sa mga worst nightmares ko talaga na mangyari sa akin. So, people really had to behave because I mean, at least Pinoy's cabinet back then, I mean, hindi naman sa wala kaming naging aberya. Meron din naman, 'di ba? Pero I wanted, at least as my personal commitment, na hindi ako kasama dun sa aberya.
Very interesting that you said that you didn't want to disappoint the president, no? Kasi aminin natin, the following administration, yung mga successors, especially the spokesperson, medyo they really figured in the news. Parang they became the news themselves, especially mga blunders nila. So, anong naging reaction niyo, ma'am, whenever you watch for example, the spokesperson that followed you, naging involved sila sa mga controversies?
I think my point of view there is very different, no? Because having been in that job, I am very familiar with how difficult it is and how much you have to juggle between contending forces, 'di ba? That being said, sa akin kasi my point was I should never be the news. 'Di ba? Ako yung tiga-deliver ng balita, pero hindi dapat ako yung balita, hindi ako yung storya. I had to make sure that I detached myself as far away as possible. Kumbaga, think of it this way, ako yung microphone, pero hindi ako yung storya dahil may ginawa ako or meron akong sinabi na for myself. When I agreed to take on that job, I knew that it was very clear in my head that journalists were asking me questions because I spoke for the president. Journalists were not asking for my personal opinion. So from day one, klaro sa akin yon na kahit iba ang opinion ko, hindi ko pwedeng yun yung iuna. Again, mouthpiece ako. Hindi ako pwedeng nagsasarili at kung ano-ano yung sinasabi. So to me, again, that was very clear, no? There were some instances in the past, wag naman past, well, malapit na maging past, current administration na talagang nauuna rin syempre yung commiseration ko. Kasi naiintindihan ko yung pwesto, naiintindihan ko yung trabaho. Pero nung tumagal, parang pati ako napapakamot na rin ako ng ulo. Because nobody really trains to be in government. Sa totoo lang, 'di ba? Even if you have a good academic background, it doesn't really prepare you for the demands of government. But, as human beings, we're supposed to learn from our mistakes. 'Di ba? So kung hindi ka natuto after event 2 or event 3 or event 4, medyo may problema na tayo sa ganon.
So, Ms. Abby, when the Aquino administration ended, you actually still work for PNoy as a spokesperson. So, how do you want the next generation to remember PNoy and his legacy?
I want people to remember him as the president who always did things for you, not for himself. Kasi hindi naman siya, in all my years of working for him, hindi ko nakita kasi sa kanya yung, sige gawin natin to kasi mapapabuti siya or mapapabuti yung pamilya niya. Especially when he was still president. You cannot point to a project or a program that he did because it would enrich his family or himself. So, he made difficult decisions despite knowing that they were going to be unpopular or difficult. Pero ginawa niya yon because inisip niya na yun yung it was the right thing for him to do. Not because it would benefit him or it would make him popular or make him look pogi, but it was really because in his mind, yun yung tamang gawin. So even if people didn't like it and he got a lot of flack for certain things, in many instances, he was proven right. Diba? Like, I'll give you a concrete example. He got so much flack for refusing to increase the pension of SSS.
Yes, I
Diba?
thought that then.
Oo. So, ang daming nagalit. It was election year. People were saying, why did you do that? Diba? Kumbaga mawawala yung, mababawasan ng bango mo, as the old people would say it. But, in the end, he was proven right because you can't increase benefits without increasing contributions. Diba? Otherwise, iikli yung buhay ng SSS pension, ng life ng SSS. So, now people know. Did it benefit him personally? No, it did not. Diba? Dami pang ang nagalit sa kanya. But in the end, he was proven right. Natama yung naging decision niya at the time.
We all know that PNoy was one of the most siguro attacked president online. Grabe talaga yung misinformation and propaganda, especially leading up to the 2016 elections. And even until now, yung narrative ng mga dilawan, oligarchs, ganyan. Ano mo naging reaction nyo whenever you read those stuff? And do you think PNoy or the administration could have exerted more efforts to debunk those propaganda and lies?
I think we were not prepared. Nobody was prepared for how nasty it became. And we used to ask him about it. Na, little things that would come out that should we respond to it. But si PNoy kasi was a gentleman of the old guard eh. Hindi yan mapagpatol na yung mga maliliit, we talk about it, but he'd say, hayaan nyo na yan. Kasi his belief in the Filipino was so strong that he knew that people would come around to the truth. Diba? But unfortunately, we're still in the middle of that entire disinformation war. Diba? And that it has gotten nastier by each election season. Diba? So ako, I would did he have did he harbor any regrets? I don't think so. Diba? Because he knew what he did and he was confident in it. So, nakakainis ba? Oo naman, for sure. 'Di ba? But for him to have, kumbaga, would he have lost sleep over it? Parang hindi siya yung ganong type ng tao. Again, whether you agree with him or not, his belief in the Filipino was so strong. Talagang naniniwala siyang people will see through propaganda.
Miss Abby, that was very touching kasi you worked with Sir PNoy directly, and even after the period that you served, you actually stayed as his spokesperson. So that tells a lot na you really do enjoy working with him, parang even if more than on a government capacity, on a personal note, you still continued your service. So, leading to that, do you agree with VP Leni's pronouncement that Pinoy's death marked an end of an era? And if you can share more other thoughts on that, if you would want to.
I think it did because, again, Pinoy was a gentleman of the old guard. Diba? There are also still a couple of gentlemen like him around in the Philippines. Um, but yeah, iba yung the way that he carried himself also. Or, not to denigrate naman the other former presidents like FVR and GMA and ERAP. They knew that the presidency demanded their best behavior. Diba? Whether you disagree with some of their policies, whether you disagree with some of the things that they did, I can say na binigyan nila ng respeto yung office of the president. Diba? Hindi little things. Diba? Showing up on time, making sure that you don't look like you just rolled out of bed. You represent the country in the best way that you know. Diba? I remember one story, and this is from the time of former President Joseph Estrada. Diba he was very casual? Mahilig siyang naka-jacket, yung famous ERAP jacket niya, diba? I remember, and this was a story that was told to me by then DTI Secretary Mar Rojas. They were on their way to meet Bill Gates of Microsoft. And even though ERAP was very nervous about his attire, na sandali, ano bang isusuot ko? Si Bill Gates to, di ba? So parang ano bang ano. So at that time, ang naging suggestion sa kanya is to forgo his usual Arab look at nag-Amerikana si former President Arab. Ang nakakatawa, si Bill Gates pala was thinking the same thing. Na dahil presidente to, parang, pero ano siya, casual guy. So, to make him feel at ease also, I'll wear casual. So, nung nagkaharap sila, naka-Amerikana si Erap, to si Bill Gates, naka-Erap look. So, nagkatawanan na lang sila na parang, ay, sandali. So, I guess it's in that way that Pinoy always also thought he always accorded the office of the president with the highest amount of respect that he could give.
Did that not show po ba in the succeeding administration? Parang did you think na it is remarkably Pinoy himself? That parang that is his brand and you did not see that in the succeeding ones?
No, to be fair to the rest, I know that they did their best not to make us pahiya in the in the international community. Unfortunately, I don't think President Duterte cared all too much to uphold that image. So, no, in that sense, talagang very different si Pinoy and even the rest, like FBR and GMA and even, parang sabi nga nung isa kong friend, wow, the bar is so low. We think Erap was, was steady. So, no. Unfortunately, I don't think the successor held up well in that regard.
I love that you are so candid about it. Really appreciate the honesty. And since this election season, ma'am, no, it would have been interesting to see what role Pinoy could have played in terms of supporting VP Leni. What do you think are the things that he could have done if he was still with us today?
Oh, number one, I think Pinoy would have, as his sisters were, would have been the first to welcome her in Tarlac. Diba? He's a very, like any politician, they draw energy from the crowd. Pinoy was no different. I remember that whenever he would go out on campaigns, talagang very energized yan, because he loved talking to people up close. Hindi yung parang nakaupo lang kayo sa mesa. Very siya dyan, very, very happy siya kapag ganyan. So I think he would have been the first to welcome VP Leni in Tarlac. And but apart from that, apart from yung ang tawag namin dyan yung nag-eentablado para dun sa kandidatong sinusuportahan mo, he would have been a very valuable ally in, the rigors of politics and elections. Yung kakausapin si ganito, magsa-strategize sa ganyan. I mean, very si Pinoy eh. He was a very brainy, he was a very cerebral person. So I think he would have been there helping talk to allies, helping gain more allies because also of the relationships that he built over the years. And I think he would have been very willing to use that strength of his to help VP Leni's campaign.
Ma'am, when he was still alive, did you have any conversation with him about plans in the 2022 elections? Like, napag-usapan niyo po ba sinong like possible candidates to support?
I don't think there was a question in his mind who it was going to be. It was just really her saying yes again sa taong bayan. Even when he was alive, we would talk about syempre current events, what was happening in COVID, 'di ba, apart from his health. Actually, ako nga yung ako yung laging tama na yung politika, 'di ba? Kamusta muna yung health mo? Yung mga ganong things. So, I don't think there was a doubt in his mind who the candidate would be. Talagang iniintay lang na siya yung umoo. As has always been the case since then Mrs. Robredo entered political life. Parang lagi namang siya yung iniintay. I don't mean that in any bad way, but parang pinili na siya, kailangan lang niyang umoo. Even when she was being asked to run in Camarines Sur after Sec Jess died, talagang madali yung pagpili sa kanya. Ang mahirap talaga yung pagkumbinsi kay ma'am to run for Congress, to run for the vice presidency, and then eventually to run for president.
Wow, that's something that we learned today, ma'am. We didn't know that Pinoy already had this eye set on VP Leni. And I think that speaks a lot on VP Leni's credentials and qualifications po, no? And we're really happy that you yourself is a really loud and proud kakamping in social media. And I think, ma'am, there are similarities, no, with the way that VP Leni is seen as a woman in the government. And you yourself were subject to several, sabihin na natin, misogynistic attacks when you were still the Deputy Presidential Spokesperson. Do you believe, ma'am, that double standards still exist for women in the government?
Oo naman. Oo naman. At the time of Pinoy, it was just very muted because they knew that si Pinoy himself was a woman's ally. Diba? His cabinet was, one-third of his cabinet were women. I mean, imagine. I mean, that's Laila de Lima, that's Dinky Soliman, that's Julia Abad, that's Ging Deles, Tati Licuanan. Parang pinakita niya talaga yung, kumbaga, yung pagiging alyado niya ng babae. Not just in a speech for Women's Month, but he actually put capable women in positions of power and authority. So talagang naniniwala siya dun sa kakayahan. I say very muted, again, because Pinoy would not have tolerated any misogyny or any discrimination. So the ones that I encountered when I was there, actually medyo double whammy ako kasi babae na ako, bata pa ako nung panahon na yon. So, there was a lot of, you could feel it eh, there's a lot of friction na parang, sino ba to? 'Di ba? Bakit ang bata pa niyan? Yung mga ganon, na ako naman, again, because I was confident that my principal or my boss had my back, I just did the work. Pero meron yan, nakikita mo yan eh. You see it in the people that, in the way that people look at you. You see it in, pero syempre may takot. Kasi kahit pa paano, I had rank when I was in government. And merong takot na baka magsumbong sa presidente kapag may ginawa kaming hindi maganda dito. So, I think, again, very muted, and also because of the president. Alam nilang hindi yan magto-tolerate ng kahit anong anything untoward or any discrimination against women.
Speaking from experience, even in the private sector, there is always, sadly, double standards for women. And we kind of miss to see that kind of leadership, that kind of administration in the next administration, hopefully, to see that they are uplifting women up because women can do so much more.
I realized that's how important leadership is. 'Di ba? Because people follow eh. 'Di ba? Parang kapag nakita nilang yung presidente nyo, especially the president of a country, will not tolerate, stupid comments against women, it follows eh. Even those in the private sector, kasi alam mong mabuboljak ka. 'Di ba? Alam mong mapapahiya ka. Unlike, sadly, ngayon cursing is the norm. 'Di ba? Na parang 'di ba, parang alam nung kahit wala ka sa gobyerno, alam mong pag medyo na social media ka for rape jokes, alam mong the storm is gonna come. 'Di ba? But unfortunately, nanonormalize pa rin kasi yung ganyan. And especially in the private sector, 'di ba? Na if your president or your CEO tolerates that, ay nako, you can bet that everybody in the rank and file and in management will do the same. Kasi nakikita nilang pwede. 'Di ba? So, again, that's, it's emphasis also that leadership at the top matters because everybody will follow. I'll give you an example. Remember yung no wang-wang ni PNoy? 'Di ba? But before that, parang lahat ng tao nagwawangwang. Nung nakitang siya, hindi siya ganun, 'di ba nagsunuran sila eh? But what happened after? 'Di ba nagbalikan sila? Kasi nga, tolerated na at the top. So, yun yung mga bagay na siguro iniisip nung iba, ano lang yan, PR lang yan, yung wang-wang na yan, yung no wang-wang, PR lang yan. Pero, now it's back. And people are pissed. So, diba? That's it eh. Leadership comes from the top, as it should.
Completely agree, ma'am. My friends and I were talking about this like a couple of weeks ago na sobrang na-normalize talaga, ma'am, yung ganung behavior. Especially sa mga bata. Parang we haven't had, for the past 6 years, we haven't had a president na young people or children can look up to and emulate the behavior. Kasi grabe talaga, ma'am, yung pagbagsak ng, I would say, values ng country since this administration came into power. So nakakalungkot po talaga. And I think, ma'am, you can relate, no, since you had a young child when you were in the government.
Yeah, oo, exactly. I mean, even, the friends of my son, parang, or, parents really have to actively tell them na, oh, look at that, that's bad ha, don't be like that. Alam mo yun talaga, you don't expect to use your president as a poster child for bad behavior to your children. Diba? Na parang, even, my son was like, why is he like that? Why is he like this? I mean, children know. Alam ng mga bata yung tama at mali eh. Diba? So, hindi nakakatulong na merong isang taong nasa mataas na pwesto na ganyan yung asta. Kasi when the kids follow, 'di ba? What are you gonna say? 'Di ba? Parang hindi ko alam, feeling ko yung mga pumapalakpak at yung tumatawa sa behavior na ganyan, very superficial. Kasi pag ginawa ng mga anak nila yan sa kanila, anong isasagot nila? 'Di ba? Kanino ba napulot yan? Eh, 'di ba dun sa pinapalakpakan niyo?
Truly, Miss Abby, tone from the top is very important. And syempre, the words of the president hold so much weight. So what do you think po of the not so recent statement of President Duterte when he said that the presidency is not a job for a woman? Kasi some people say na VP Leni is weak just because of her gender. And do you think that the Philippines is ready for another woman president?
I think we've been long overdue. And, I'd like to see him tell that to the face of former President Gloria Macapagal Arroyo. 'Di ba? Isa sa mga kaalyado niya na, 'di ba? Ako, I really do not subscribe to that sort of thinking. I think it's wrong. It's misogynist. It is so 1960s. 'Di ba? Yung mga ganyang pag-iisip, kung ganyan ang pag-iisip mo, sa 1960s ka na lang, huwag ka na lang magsalita sa 2022.
Agree, ma'am. And especially considering na his daughter is also running for, well, not presidency, but vice president. And it's interesting, ma'am, no, that Sara Duterte doesn't get the same misogynistic comments from her supporters, but her supporters are really ganging up on VP Leni, saying that she's incapable because she's a woman. What is your reaction, ma'am, on those types of comments?
Well, ako, I think it's obviously coming from, if it's coming from trolls, they're paid to say that. 'Di ba? But what is sad is that there are real people who think that. 'Di ba? And it's not just a disservice to their mothers, to their sisters. 'Di ba? Because capability is not about gender eh. 'Di ba? Kung ano man yung gender or sexual preference mo, kung capable ka, period. 'Di ba? It should not be taken against you. In the same way that I also would not agree with people who will say na, si Sarah wag nang tumakbo kasi babae, hindi kaya maging vice president. I also would disagree and would defend her in case merong ganyang magsabi sa kanya. Pero kasi, there is an obvious double standard that is prevalent. 'Di ba? Na just because lalaki ka, kaya mo, oy, hindi ganun 'yon. Marami akong lalaking alam na hindi naman competent sa trabaho. Pero alam nyo kasi napaka-ingrained. Sa totoo lang, napaka-ingrained ng misogyny sa kultura natin. 'Di ba? You see it in ordinary language. 'Di ba? Na wala kang, sige, I'll censor myself. 'Di ba? Pag sinasabing yung lalaki matapang, sinasabing merong kang ayoko i-censor ko talaga yung sarili ko. Parang, sige,
May
in
balls
English
pa.
na lang. Oo. 'Di ba? Pag sinasabi yung lalaki, pag matapang, may balls. 'Di ba? Pero, sasabihin sa babae, wag ka, parang merong trabahong pambabae, trabahong panlalaki. 'Di ba? Hindi mo kaya yan. Parang ganyan. Parang, you see it in ordinary language and dun mo nakikita na very ingrained sa atin na kahit hindi pala yun yung iniisip mo, nakasanayan mo na. So it also takes some sort of self-awareness to snap out of that mentality because sometimes we just don't realize it. But because it's been so ingrained in us, automatic, sinusundan natin. Pero pag na-call out tayo, or may nagsabi sa atin na, uy, parang medyo off yata yung sinabi mo. 'Di ba? And then the self-awareness and the realization and the correction follows. 'Di ba? Kasi hindi naman tayo lahat born woke. 'Di ba? So minsan may konting space pa tayo for correction.
I personally know some people na from the start, there may be some beliefs, yun nga, as you said, ingrained with them since childhood. Since di naman natin control yung environment natin, who we interact with ever since we are very young. So, di nila kasalanan na they are brought up with such circumstances and beliefs. But through meeting us or through meeting people na hopefully will guide them and inform them na this is not the right kind mindset, there are still chances to improve and to look into ourselves and think, teka, tama ba ito iniisip ko? And to challenge those beliefs.
Ma'am, how do you think po the VP Leni's campaign? Do you think what are the opportunities pa to address these misogynistic attacks? Kasi personally, what I see, VP Leni is becoming more self-assured when she's speaking. She's becoming more empowered to clap back at the trolls po recently. What do you think po are the opportunities to improve pa?
I think she responds very well to misogynistic attacks and very calmly, I have to say, diba? It speaks of her quiet strength eh. So ako, I wouldn't change any of it. Um, I do know that the VP has tried in the past to stay quiet because again, she is a person of the old guard na parang, ba't ko papatulan? Hindi naman totoo. 'Di ba? Um, Times have changed in the sense that she is in a different position right now where the fake news hurts her chances. So I'm glad to see that she has recalibrated her strategy in that sense na talagang, sige, hindi sa papatulan pero kailangang i-correct. 'Di ba? I think in some of the surveys that I've seen sa kanya, bumababa na yung negative perception ng mga tao because of misogynistic tendencies. So I think she has done a very good job of addressing that particular negative point that people see in her.
I love the point that you made, ma'am, about her quiet strength. Kasi I think it's very underrated in our culture. Kasi when we think of strength, we think of someone siguro like the current president na macho, maingay, palamura, ganyan. But if you would think about it, karamihan ng mga kababaihan at mga nanay natin, they really have this quiet strength na hindi man sila maingay, hindi man sila mayabang, they survive many obstacles in their lives with quiet strength and dignity. And I think that's really something that a lot of people should realize that VP Leni has.
You know, if it's one thing, I watched her bury her husband. I mean, I was there when it happened, and the circumstances of the passing of Sec Jess are really, really, really very tragic. But I not once did I see her flinch at all. I mean, she was dala niya yung pamilya niya eh. 'Di ba? Hindi siya hindi ko siya nakitang umiyak, hindi ko siya nakitang nagtantrum, hindi ko siya nakitang mahina. Sa totoo lang. And I saw a lot of men cry when Sec Jess passed. I'm not saying that that's wrong, but nakita, kumbaga, nag-manifest yung grief nila na ganun. 'Di ba? Na hindi man lang sila asawa or kapamilya. What more yung asawa at yung mga anak. But one thing about the Robredo women, quiet strength is what, you can expect that they will carry your burden for you and carry their own burden without bothering anybody, without annoying anybody, without asking for help. They will bear that burden with grace and with dignity.
I can relate in that sentiment na quiet strength will get you through so much, and you don't have really to be loud and proud to let other people know that you are strong. And basing from your anecdote, I was just thinking maybe at the back of Miss Lenny's mind, maybe what she's thinking is she has to be the one appearing to be strong because of her children, and she had to be their pillar of strength during that difficult time. So that is very remarkable and admirable. So thank you for sharing that story.
Well, right now, fake news and disinformation still proliferate in social media. And based on recent studies, di ba, parang VP Leni is parang siya yung pinaka natatalo or pinaka nadadamage ng fake news and disinformation. And on the other hand, yung pinaka nagbe-benefit naman is the front runner who is Bongbong Marcos. And ngayon, ma'am, kasi very prevalent siya in TikTok, and TikTok is dominated by young people, for example, 18 to 24 years old, and they comprise 13% of our population. What is your advice, ma'am, to this segment of our population po para they can make a well-informed choice for the upcoming elections?
I think in the same way that you look at reviews when you go on Lazada or Shopee, or you ask your friends before buying something that you like, you ask other people. You go to other sources. Diba? Something you see on TikTok is not the end all and the be all of information for the younger kids, no? It's important to also let them know na yung pag-iingat, 'di ba? Hindi tayo agad naniniwala. Kaya mag-check tayo sa iba, even if it's a candidate that you like, 'di ba? Even if it's someone you don't like, kailangan let's go to other sources to check, 'di ba? Kumbaga, ang lagi kong sinasabi sa kanila, pag nakakakita ka ng online seller na hindi mo naman kilala, anong ginagawa mo? 'Di ba nagche-check ka muna? Or nakakakita ka ng crush mo on social media, 'di ba sinustalk mo muna? Kasi baka naman mamaya hindi mo kilala 'yan, 'di ba? Nagre-research ka. Ganon din 'yan kapag namimili ka ng kandidato. 'Di ba? Hindi mo lang 'yan isustalk sa TikTok, titignan mo sa Facebook, Google mo yung pangalan, 'di ba? Normal 'yun. That's normal behavior. And hindi yun pagiging suspicious or hindi yun pagiging no, walang tiwala sa ibang tao. But again, it is just checking the information that you receive, whether it's about a crush, a boyfriend, a friend, a presidential candidate. Just always check somewhere else.
Kumbaga, if bibili nga tayo ng produkto, di ba, sobrang tagal ng desisyon natin. How much more sa magiging presidente natin in the next 6 years? And to be fair, ma'am, no, when I was in the Pasig Laban last Sunday, parang 70% of the crowd was composed of young people. Kaya sobrang saya din na young people are really stepping up in this election season. And this is really, I feel that this is really the fight of our generation. Kaya we really are stepping up and making sure that we will make the right choice.
That's nice to hear. Also, may pamangkins. Parang they were, tinawagan pa niya ako niyan nung voter registration season. Na parang, tita, are you registered? Parang ako talaga, ako pa yung tinanong niyo. Of course I'm registered. Sabi nga, are you sure? Baka naman your registration is inactive. Why don't you go check? We'll come with you. So, I appreciate talaga their I see it, a lot of the younger people now are the more active ones, which is, it gives me hope. Honestly, it gives me hope that way. When I talk to the younger people on Twitter, when there's may pa-space, ganyan, I see that a lot of them are really young, and that gives me hope. Diba? I mean, and honestly, even, God forbid, even if VP Leni does not make it in May, I know that there are young people who will be the next ones to continue, that drive for what should be and what is ideal.
Of course, the president or our leader is very important, but really what makes up a country, what makes the Philippines is its people. So even if, unfortunately, our bet doesn't make it, we will make sure that we get the service that we want, that we make the country that we want and deserve. And right now, actually, we're going towards the end of our program, and this might be one of our last questions. In the upcoming May 9 presidential elections, why is the best man for the job a woman?
VP Leni has shown us what she can do, diba? On a shoestring budget. Diba? Compared to the budget of other government agencies, she was able to do so much, diba? Pag nilistahan niya tayo, kulang yung 2 minutes, diba? Yung bayanihan i-konsulta, yung swab cab niya, yung shuttle niya, yung angat buhay programs niya, ang dami. At hindi ba tayo nagtataka na kahit napakaliit ng budget ng opisina niya, nagawa niyang lahat yon? Bakit? Kasi ang daming tao sa private sector na nakikipag-collaborate sa kanya. And normally, people in the private sector, unless kontratista ka or rumaraket ka sa gobyerno, you're actually quite allergic, 'di ba, to collaborating with
Skeptical.
government. Oo, 'di ba? Kasi parang baka naman saan mapunta 'yan, baka naman kumat pa kayo or something. I mean, come on. I mean, let's face it. That's a very real sentiment in the private sector. Pero bakit sila kay VP Leni pumupunta? Kasi alam nila na totoo yung trabaho at honest at walang kinikita. 'Di ba? Hindi kumikickback, hindi bumubukol. Nagtatrabaho ng totoo at yung pera ng private sector, they entrust to her. I mean, obviously not pera-pera, 'di ba? But you know, their resources they entrust to her to enable her to do the program. That's a very, kumbaga parang badge of honesty na binibigay ng private sector yan sa kanya. You know, apart from her track record, she really works for people eh. Wala pa siya sa gobyerno, ganyan na siya talaga. 'Di ba? Alternative people's lawyer, her work with abused women and children, 'di ba? That started long before her career in public service. I mean in government service. I think it's really just a matter of time that people see it. And hopefully, those of us who support her, tama na yung usap-usap natin amongst ourselves. 'Di ba? Kailangan na nating lumabas. Kailangan na nating mga usap ng ibang tao na hindi pareho ng pag-iisip natin. It's time really for us to start reaching out and talking to others. Why is she the best person? Because I think she has shown us in the past 6 years that her heart has always been in the right place and that it dictates the good that she wants to do for you. Diba? Di ka niya nanakawan, hindi ka niya dadayain, di ka niya bobolahin. Si Ma'am Leni hindi lang PR. She's the real deal. And she did not want this at all. She told us this before that she would have wanted to close that chapter of her life so she can go back to her children, to her 3 daughters, and just be a mother. Diba? A normal, ordinary mother. But she has chosen to answer the call again. And, you know, I think in my experience, the people who do not want the presidency usually end up being the best at it. Kasi wala silang personal interest or ambition na kunin yung napakahirap na trabaho. Diba? They're not in it for the money, they're not in it for the fame. They will serve us well. Because I can tell you that the moment that she gets into Malacanang, she will be looking forward to her last day so she can retire and go back to her children.
Similarly to PNoy, no, if I can just tie it back, parang PNoy did not seek another position after he retired as president. And I can sense that Miss Leni is like that also. Parang after a very grueling stint as a VP, she did not actually want to go for a higher position. She is not power hungry, but she did it out of sense of duty and out of, as she said in the debates, she said it because she knew na there might be a possibility of a certain kind of politics to come back, the kind of politics na the Filipino people do not deserve.
You see it, di ba? Kadiri na. Parang yung asawa, yung anak, yung nanay, yung tatay, ewan ko, kulang na lang yung aso nila gawing mayor, di ba? Parang I mean, you know, I'm sorry. For me, there's no other word for it. It's really kadiri. Ginawa na nilang negosyo yung politika. So, ako, I don't see that in VP Leni. And ako, my wish for her is that she will get to retire after 6 years. Diba? Binibiro ko siya lagi na pwede na siyang manood ng K-drama niya at mag-organize ng pantry niya after 6 years.
Yes, we look forward to a very fruitful 6 years, God willing. That happens. That wraps up our program. Miss Abby, do you want to share something or plug something? We knew na you're also having your own podcast, so you may want to talk about that as we end our program.
Ay nako, if you wanna just spend time listening to your tita's talk, then you can find us on Spotify. It's called Tita Talks. We're sort of on hiatus right now because, you know, life gets in the way. But you can find our old episodes. So if you just wanna decompress and listen to your titas talk. Maybe your titas, you miss your titas, the ones that,
Yes.
sit in Mary Grace and then just, ay, bakit si ganyan, ganyan. And, for the young people out there, and sige na nga, the not so young people, do your bit for the country this coming May 9. Please, go out and vote. Especially if you're voting for Leni Robredo.
Yes.
Diba?
Yes.
But if you're not, you still have 40 days to think about it. Diba? If you want to listen to another side of it, send me a message on Twitter or on Facebook. I will be happy to have a chat with you.
Thank you very much once again, Miss Abby, and to our listeners. You heard Miss Abby saying that if you have second thoughts, second doubts about the candidate that we are supporting, you can reach out to her. So, di ba? Very, so you can make the right decision. So, Irwin.
Very accommodating. And we love titas na hindi naniniwala sa fake news.
Oo nga. Bawal sa mga titas namin yan. Bawal naniniwala sa fake news tsaka sa ivermectin. So, magagalit ang mga tita nyo.
Correct. At mga tita na hindi naniniwala sa Talyano Gold. Char.
Correct! Diba? Bawal. Bawal sa amin ang Taliano Gold.
Thank you so much, Attorney Abby. It was really a pleasure to have you. For me, it was like
Thank
taking a
you.
trip down memory lane. Sobrang salamat po talaga.
Thank you, thank you.
So, Anina, we really had a fruitful discussion with Attorney Abby. What were your biggest takeaways from our episode today?
During PNoy's time, I am still not invested that much in politics. Kasi syempre, as you said, we are still in school, high school, college. So at that time, I was very carefree. But I remember na it was a time not as much tumultuous as this. Parang not as much, if I may say, chaotic as this. So
Yes.
I really had a part siguro siya parang because it was part of my childhood. It was a really better time than this. Speaking to Miss Abby and realizing that we can go back and even go further to a state of government that listens to its people, is not self-serving, and really just really answers the call to what public service should look like. It really gives me hope and it really makes me excited na nakaahon na rin tayo to a state of the country that we truly deserve.
Sobrang agree with everything you said, Anina. Pinoy's administration came at a time na we were still forming our own political beliefs. Pero looking back, in all fairness naman, it was a more peaceful time compared to the chaotic environment that we have right now. And siguro yung nag-stuck sa akin sa sinabi ni Ma'am Abby was even if, God forbid, VP Leni doesn't win, we can still count on the young people and the many people that VP Leni has inspired to take the challenge and step up to demand better leadership. Sana maging aware din yung mga kumakandidato na hindi porket mananalo sila, we will just blindly follow their orders and we will still hold them accountable.
Yes, that's true. As I said earlier, parang what makes a country is its people. Although, syempre, the leader is important because they get to make all of the policies and stuff like that. But at the end of the day, it all boils down to its people. What do they believe in, their values, and they will be the one to shape the nation.
Thank you so very much, Anina, for joining me today. See you on our next trip down Rosas Boulevard.